Joining me now is Barry O'Shea, the CEO of Highland Copper. Great to see you, sir.
Nice to see you also.
So Highland has a really interesting story in that your two projects are in Michigan. You've got the 100% owned Copperwood project and then a JV on the White Pine project. So can you give us a snapshot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what will surprise investors is just the sheer scale of the resources. We have 3.7 billion pounds defined at Copperwood, and our JV at White Pine, it's 5.4 billion pounds. So these two great projects in a historic mining district that's really looking to welcome back mining. Copperwood is truly advanced. It has a feasibility study. We've completed permitting in recent years. The state is considering giving us a grant for $50 million, really a project that's ready for a construction decision. And at White Pine, we JV'd that last year with Kinterra, so we've largely put operatorship into their hands where they're advancing the project through feasibility and permitting. It's nicely sequenced with Copperwood. Again, a large project at PEA level, also ready to move forward.
So this $50 million grant you're being considered for with the government, it still needs to clear legislative committees, and so is that kind of a rubber stamp sort of situation, or is it might be a bit tricky to actually get the money?
Yeah, not quite either, I guess I'd say. We're working through the process methodically. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation proposed the grant in January of this year. It's a $50 million grant. It's a straight grant to assist with the construction of the project, particularly infrastructure related to the project. It was approved by the Michigan Strategic Fund unanimously in March. Then it moves to the legislative level, so the House approved it with bipartisan support in June, and now we're at the Senate level. So the Senate Appropriations Committee is due to vote, ideally in the near term. That will be the final step, and the grant will be complete. And it's a fantastic financial benefit to the project. It's dollar for dollar, $50 million in terms of NPV. But more importantly, it's a real endorsement, again, from the state of our license to operate. The state has done considerable diligence through this process, understanding the environmental impacts, the community benefits, the economic benefits, and as I say, just another endorsement from the state that we're welcome.
Now, Barry, what would you say the timeline is onto detailed engineering, project financing, and then a decision on construction?
Yeah, so as you know, timelines in the US in particular are interesting. I've read articles recently that reflect from initial discovery in the US, projects can take 15 to 20 years to get to where we are today. So, what's nice is that we've put so much of that time behind us. The geology is complete, the resource is well defined. We've completed a feasibility study this past year with G Mining. Permitting is complete, again, a fundamental building block for our project. So we are so far down that path, we're really now progressing towards construction decision. And there are a few key things we need to execute there. Number one is early site works that we're currently doing. We're allowed by the state, obviously, to start. We haven't made a full construction decision, but we've done initial site impacts. That means the site clearing. And when you impact some of the wetland and streams, you're required to mitigate those. So this summer, we're working on some really nice mitigation projects. We're constructing mitigating wetland, getting some really nice credit from the state and the communities for our work there. We're also establishing a nice operating presence. The next piece really is moving into detailed engineering. Obviously, having a feasibility study is fantastic, but to get yourself ready for a financing and, of course, a responsible construction decision, you want to work through detailed engineering, both to optimize but also de-risk the project. We'd like to step into that in the near term, ideally into a project financing in 2025. And assuming we work through those, naturally needing relatively robust markets from a capital markets perspective, we could be constructing in early 2026. That would have us producing copper at full run rate in 2028, which, relative to the timelines of 15 to 20 years for others at initial discovery, that's quite close.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you can do that in 3 years or so, for sure. So on to White Pine with Kinterra, the joint venture. You're in the process of advancing it from PEA to feasibility study. Can you update us on the progress there? And also, you've got a second drilling program underway, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And maybe just a little history. So we sold 2/3 of White Pine to Kinterra, a Toronto private equity, about a year ago. And it was in part because White Pine is second on our priority list. Naturally, we're prioritizing our Copperwood project, that is the fully owned and permitted project. But we've asked Kinterra really to take over operatorship, and they're doing exactly what we would have hoped. They're putting their time and capital and energy into it. They're just in the midst of completing a second drill program during 2023. They completed around 7,000 meters, predominantly for the purposes of met and geotech samples. They're now in the midst of a second program that's double that, so near 15,000 meters for resource infill as well as ongoing testing. So they're advancing the project well as you think about environmental baselining for the purposes of permit applications, which we expect they'll submit in 2025, in addition to a resource update. So really getting that project ready for 2 to 3 years down the road to be at feasibility and permitted, and again nicely sequenced with our Copperwood project, which we'll hope to have constructed in the interim.
Great. And lastly here, Barry, from an overall standpoint in terms of the investment case, you're in a nice jurisdiction. You've got U.S. needs copper, obviously. It's a unique story in Michigan. So can you sum it up for us?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. So I think there's three key things you need to think about when you're looking at Highland Copper. Number one, we have one of the only fully permitted projects held by a junior in the U.S. Permits are the most significant building block and hurdle. We're past that. Copperwood is also arguably one of the most highly leveraged projects to copper price. To give you a sense, a 25% increase in copper price from $4 to $5 triples the net asset value of the project to over $500 million. So true leverage to copper price, something again that investors are looking for. And again, speaking to Michigan, there are very few jurisdictions worldwide that are both permitting and incentivizing mining. So overall, what that tells you is there's significant optionality in Copperwood and in Highland, specific to the net asset value as you look at changes in copper price, but also with permits, our capacity to step into production and cash flow multiples that producers enjoy. Maybe the last thing I'd say is that, in investing in mining, obviously, if you think about gold, there are so many investment opportunities. In copper, there are fewer. And if you hone in on a list that is in Tier 1 jurisdictions with permits in hand, the list gets extremely short. Arguably Foran, top of the list. We are right there with them on a very short list at that point.
Well, thanks for shedding some light on Highland Copper.
Thank you very much.
That was great. Barry O'Shea, the CEO of Highland Copper.